Wow, I didn't know Brian was that cute when he was a kid. Gosh, I miss my friend. Thank you all for being here this afternoon to celebrate the life of my good friend Brian. As I begin, I want to give my deepest condolences to the Sue family, to Elder Bennett, Kathy, Jason, and John. I know he was very dear to your family. We were very close to him. And I think we as a community, we can all agree that during this difficult season, our prayers are with you. Our heart really breaks for you. My first recollection of Brian was during the first Sunday school I taught at EFCOC. I believe it was a college young adult Sunday school. And afterwards, I remember Brian and John coming up to me and just greeting me warmly. And from then on, as we started talking, we discovered we had a lot in common, which included manga, anime, more video games, maybe theology on the side, but I think we ended up kind of being the geeks in the church, It was a memorable thing. I remember one of the moments that I treasure the most was when we had Monday night Bible studies at Pastor James's place. We would make sure to get there early so that we could set up all the video games. We would game out probably for 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours before they called us and finally dragged us to dinner. And then we got to the Bible study and really had some deep conversations about God and His Word. And on the surface, I think all of you know Brian. He's this happy-go-lucky type of guy who's always looking to crack a joke and then have that grin as he watches you cringe at his jokes. Yeah. But he loved to make people feel at home. He loved to make people laugh. But at the same time, Brian was this person who was deeply contemplative. He thought and reflected deeply about his life, about his relationships, and about his faith. He's like this man that is described in a quote by Vincent van Gogh, who said, "The heart of a man is very much like the sea. It has its storms, it has its tides, and in its depths, it has its pearls too." And I think that was kind of like Brian. He had ups and downs, but man, he got some pearls in his life. Brian's probably cringing as I say that. Today I want to share with you just 3 of these pearls, these special things that he held close to his heart. And these are things that I've observed, and probably you've observed as well in his life. The first thing is that he had such a heart for developing his craft. As you heard from some of the testimonies and sharings of friends, he was so dedicated and disciplined, especially when he found something that he wanted to do. He would be all in. As many of you know, Brian was talented in so many ways. I remember in the early days when I got to know him, every Sunday I would see him with his sketchbook, and he would be hanging out with what I'll call the art crowd in the church. And they would be sketching, they would be sharing their concepts, chatting with each other, just trying to get better at what he did. And then later on, he got into 3D modeling, and he got into Red 5 Studios. And it was crazy. We would chat at times, and he'd be telling me that sometimes he would work 13 hours a day during crunch week for like 2 weeks straight. Couldn't get any sleep. But the thing was, sometimes that it wasn't just to get the work done. He stayed after to chat with coworkers, to become better, to practice. That was the type of person that he was. Even, when he left Red 5 and he was working on his portfolio, he would sometimes work on it into the middle of the night until his health started having issues. But that's how dedicated he was. And of course, those of you who know Brian, he got into a lot of very interesting things, like the forge that was mentioned. Remember when he came up to me and said, "I'm building a forge in my backyard." I was like, "You're building a what? In your backyard?" "Ah, a forge. You mean those things that blacksmiths use to build things?" He's like, "Yeah, it's useful for building all kinds of things and melting metal." I was like, "Okay, you go do that." He was like that. He would get into things and he would just spend his time getting better at it. And I don't have to mention the food. His meat pies are world famous. He could probably open his own shop. I'm probably going to get stoned for doing this, but I actually like his scallion pancakes better. I remember when he came up to me, he's like, "Yeah, I'm getting into scallion pancakes." And he would tell me, "Oh yeah, you have to use the right type of rolling pin," and getting into all these details. And he would even consult the moms at church to figure out the best recipe. He was dedicated to his craft. He had a heart for these things. The second thing I saw, and I think all of us will see, is he has such a heart for his friends and family. Elder Bennett and Kathy, he has such a deep affection for the two of you. Sometimes we'd be talking and he'd be describing just his desire to get closer to you too. I think it was mentioned, he would lean on you guys. And he told me before, he's like, "Yeah, I want to Sinai with my parents." I'd be like, "Do you even know what Sinai means?" Of course he knew. But I think even more recently, just 1 week before he passed away, I was chatting with him, and he was just describing his heart for the two of you, how as he saw the two of you grow older, it was just, there was this sadness. He wasn't sure what to do, how to help you two, and what he would do if the two of you passed away. And so he was so concerned with that, and he was sharing that with me. And I was just like, that just shows how much he loved the two of you. And for Jason and John, you guys were not only his brothers, but you were his comrade in arms. You guys shared so many things in life together, especially those late nights, which you were storming dungeons, defeating bosses, or stabbing each other in the back in Mario Kart. But the two of you meant so much to him. And just like in your sharing, how he would want to make sure that when you guys drove home, that you got home safely. How he would just say, "I love you," sometimes even randomly. How he would hug you as if this were the last time. As for the rest of us as his friends, I think we know about his generosity, his kindness, and his warmth. Many of you on Facebook, you posted how when he was around, he just seemed to light up the room. He made things a little brighter. I think for myself, there were many times where he would just come up to me, seemingly randomly. He'd just be like, "Hey, Isaac, how are you doing? You didn't look so well today. How can I be praying for you?" I would just be like, wow, I'm so touched by just how much he cared. And I think, honestly, if Brian were here today, he would probably be doing something to cheer us up, like telling a joke or say, "Hey, cheer up, I'm okay." In many ways, he was kind of like this hidden treasure in everyone's life. Perhaps his impact maybe wasn't obvious at first, but I think when we stop to think about what he did in our life, we can't deny that he left a mark in our lives. And I think if you were here looking out on this crowd, he would be blown away by how many of you are here, how many of you count him as a friend, and how many of you would say you were impacted by him. Because I just remember conversations sometimes where he would wonder. He would wonder if he left the world, if anybody would miss him or if it would make an impact. Brian, I hope you're seeing all this. You're seeing all the lives that you impacted. Brian was a precious friend and someone who affected us with his smile and his jokes and his crazy endeavors. And I'm glad we all got to know him. The last precious thing I want to share with you that I observed and precious in Brian's life was his relationship with God. He's one of the few people I know who really thinks deeply about his faith and just wrestles with it. Just really wrestles and asks the hard question. And I think it's because he wanted his faith to be authentic. He wanted to know for sure that the God he believed in was real and that this relationship meant something. And so he sought after God. I went through all my Facebook posts with him in our conversation, and half of our conversation is basically about faith and theology and all the questions he had. How to defend the faith, how to share the gospel with a friend, how to reconcile the Old Testament God with the New Testament one, just all these questions. Even how to learn Hebrew. That was a strange one. I didn't know why he wanted to do that. But he did. He wanted to know more. And as I was thinking about that, I want to share with you this passage in Matthew. There's this parable that Jesus tells about a certain type of person in Matthew chapter 13, verse 44 to 46. And this is what